Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Tonight, I want to answer a question that came up from my video yesterday. I had talked about how some people are afraid of guns and how I feel that it's the obligation of people that are pro-gun to help those people overcome irrational fears of guns. Well, I got a lot of people sending me emails, and by a lot, I mean four, that sent me emails asking, well, how do you help people get over their fear of guns? Because my spouse is afraid of guns, or my mother is afraid of guns, etc. So how do you go about actually doing that? How do you get them to overcome this irrational fear of firearms? Well, there are some people that are afraid of firearms for cultural, political reasons, etc. You know, they really do think guns are the roots of evil. And the only thing you can do with that is educate them. But I actually find that most people who have an irrational fear of guns, it's not because of anything political or social. It's simply because they're afraid they're going to shoot themselves or someone else with it. They believe these stupid statistics that get put forward by people like Bloomberg and Giffords, where they're like, if you own a gun, you're 5 times more likely to be shot with your own gun than you are if you don't own one. Which makes no sense, because if you don't own a gun, how likely are you to be shot with your own gun? 0. That's like saying if you have a bathtub in your house, you're 10 times more likely to fall down and break your neck in the bathtub than if you don't have a bathtub. In fact, if you don't have a bathtub, since the chances are 0, you could say chances are 10,000 times more likely. They love to use stuff like that, but without actually giving you the math. So when you have someone who's actually afraid of guns, you know, usually, like I said, because they're actually afraid of harming themselves or others with them, there's basically the rule of the 3 F's on how you get them to overcome that. And I'm not saying it's going to work on everybody. Some people will never be convinced. I've had some in-laws I know that'll never be convinced of anything. They'll never be convinced that I'm a good person no matter what I do. But most people can be reached just by following the 3 F's. And those 3 F's are facts, familiarization, and firing. And we usually in West Virginia call familiarization actually fiddling, but it would be facts, fiddling, and firing. But you all aren't hillbillies, so I'm going to say familiarization. It's basically educate them. Tell them how ridiculous statistics like that are, if I could say the word statistic. It's just ridiculous bunk that they use to scare people. Then let them know anything. Ask them what their problems are. Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to shoot myself. Explain to them why that's so unlikely. Oh, I'm afraid it'll be used against me. Explain to them that hundreds of thousands of times a year people use guns to defend themselves against bad guys, use their own gun. And the times someone's gun's used against them, maybe a couple of times a year. So do the math on that. Do the statistics. And that's usually law enforcement, etc., to have their guns taken and used on them. So just use facts. And don't get into political stuff. Don't be like, oh, you got to have a gun or the liberals are going to come and they're going to make your children be transsexual. You know, that ain't going to work. That's going to just turn people more against it. Because they're going to be like, yeah, I didn't like guns until this nut job started telling me that I did like them, why I should like them, and now I like them even less. So don't do that shit. Keep it about the guns and the factual information about the guns and how you can counter any of the negative stuff. And as far as familiarization or fiddling, well, that's just letting them get to know the gun. You know, let them disassemble a gun. Let them put it back together. Show them the individual parts. Show them that it's just a machine. It's not some demonic entity hell-bent on bloodshed. And that sounds silly that you have to do that, but sometimes you do when someone has an irrational fear. It's like when someone has an irrational fear of hamsters. Sometimes you make them hold and pet one and realize, oh, this isn't going to rip my throat out. And yes, people do have irrational fear of hamsters. So just let them play with the gun. And I know that sounds contrary to how we have to treat guns like they're loaded and safe. That rule is you treat a gun like it's loaded until you have verified it's not. So when you're in a safe circumstance with someone, like your own living room, you say, listen, this gun, we've verified this is unloaded. I'm verifying it. You're verifying it. Now we're going to take it apart and you're going to see every part of it. Then we're going to put it back together and then you can dry fire it. You can get used to it, how it feels, how hard that trigger is to actually pull on purpose. and how unlikely you are to do it accidentally, especially if it's like a revolver. That's why I love to train newbies on revolvers. Like, see, you're not going to accidentally pull that. Unless you cock that hammer back, you're not going to have a problem. And here's the basic safety rules, and look how easy they are to follow. That's familiarizing them with a gun so that they learn that it's just a tool. And then take them shooting when they're ready. Don't force it, but take them out, let them actually feel what it feels like to shoot them. Not only how fun it actually is, and how you can make games with yourself about improving your accuracy, it's good for focus, etc., but also how empowering it is, especially if you're a minority or a woman or someone tiny. It's just an empowering feeling knowing that you have an advantage if someone tries to victimize you. Those things right there, just facts and familiarization and firing, those will usually overcome an irrational fear of guns. Because all you got to do is you got to remember it's an irrational fear. And the best way to fight irrational fears is to counter them with the reality, the facts that guns are not only safe and useful, but they're pretty much, if we want to continue to live in a free country, necessary. All right, everybody, with that being said, I want to move on now to my favorite part of the show, gun talk. And I want to answer a very simple question that came in from a viewer during my live chat the other night. They asked me, since you like revolvers so much, what is better, a full underlug or a partial underlug? Now, if you're someone that doesn't know what an underlug is, that is the portion under the barrel, unless it's a Chiappa, and that's the actual barrel. But in most revolvers, that's the portion under the barrel. It's where the ejector rod usually folds into, except in some older guns, there's no underlug. But in most modern guns, you're going to find an underlug there. And that's what it is, just the portion under the barrel. Sometimes it runs the full length of the barrel. Sometimes it just runs out to the end of the ejector rod, pushes back up into the barrel. Different types, and they can be different lengths and different configurations, tapered barrels, straight barrels, whatever. I actually like the looks of the partial underlugs, but I also like the looks of the full underlugs. And that's really the biggest difference. Looks, aesthetics. Now, a lot of people will tell you it's all about balance. The full underlug gives you more weight on the front end of the gun and makes the gun balance better. I personally have always found that since full underlugs are really only an issue on like 4 inches or longer barrels, that they balance just fine with either a full or a partial underlug because the barrels are fairly heavy. But if you're someone that may be competition shooting and you're going to be using loaded down rounds and you want to reduce muzzle flip to nothing, maybe an ounce or so might make a difference in that situation. But in everyday shooting and carrying, I have found that the biggest real difference, when you put aside that small weight advantage is not going to matter to most people, the biggest difference is just, do you like how it looks? Do you like it better with the full or the partial? I personally, I go back and forth. I think the full ones look great. I think the partial ones look great. I guess I just like revolvers. And it depends on how they do it sometimes. Depends also if they do it well. I've seen some really ugly underlugs on guns before that I don't like the way they put them on there at all. But generally, it's just a matter of aesthetics. It's whatever you like best. So you choose whichever one. I think you'll be happy whichever way you go as far as performance. Like I said, just whichever one you think is prettier, get that one. All right, everybody, that's our show for today. And my hat is slowly migrating down my face, which seems to happen quite a bit. It's like my hat wants to cover like this. You look better like this. But that's our show for today because I'm trying to keep these things under 10 minutes now because 20 minutes was way too long to listen to me ramble. And if you give me 20 minutes, I'll ramble for 20 minutes. If you give me 10, I'll ramble for 10. So want to cut it here. And I just want to say before I go, I hope everyone enjoyed the show. I hope you come back again tomorrow. Until then, I just want to remind everyone to always carry and stay safe until I see you again.